Hi everyone, Mark Merrill with Firm. Veterans' rights, are they fair? And what about the Los Angeles riots and the National Guard recently? Let's start our program off a little bit differently here on Fairness in Reporting Media, folks. Here's what a Maine veteran had to say at a June 6, 2025 rally at the State House in Augusta. We'll give you his name after.
Rapes, 10,000 casualties, 4,400 killed in action. And so you have to wonder every once in a while, this is the 81st anniversary of that. Every once in a while you got to ask, well, why were we even there? Nazi Germany didn't attack America. Why were we there? And my favorite answer for that is, Americans inherently hate fascism. We hate it. Yeah. For instance, do we want leaders who want to silence free speech and punish dissent? No, we hate that. Do we want leaders who demand loyalty and erode our democratic institutions? No. Do we want leaders who fuel division by scapegoating minorities or immigrants? No, we don't. We hate that. And you sound like a fine group of patriotic Americans. But you have to watch out because the military-industrial complex and the war pigs in Congress will use your patriotism against you. And it'll take days like today and battles like D-Day, and they'll use that same rhetoric and try to convince you why we have to go fight a war somewhere else right now. And they'll use all the World War II jargon, and they'll say, well, you got to be a Churchill and not a Chamberlain. And we got to go fight them over there, so you're not fighting them over here, right? And there's always another Hitler. There's a Hitler du jour that we have to go defeat somewhere. Now I get lost. And then when we're in war, or we have our proxies fighting wars for us, we're always on the verge of victory. We're always just about to win. All we need is one more surge, or one more summer offensive. Just a few more billion of your dollars of your tax money, or just a few thousand more of your sons and daughters. And so I'd like to think that if we could take one of the fallen from Omaha Beach, bring him here, explain to him, you're not going to believe this, but there's a country right now that's arresting students for protesting genocide. They're scooping immigrants up off the street and they're sending them to prisons in countries they've never even been to. And they're taking every day, they're coming up with more fun, unique ways to scratch away at our civil liberties. And I think that veteran would say, well, what are we going to do? We have to do something. We have to go fight them right now. And this right here is a good start. Thank you.
Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. That took place on June 6, 2025 at the State House in Augusta, state capital here in Maine. Just 25, 26, maybe 27 miles from here, from where we are in the Waterville area. That was Adam Toothaker, this guy right here. President of the Maine Veterans for Peace. Believe it or not, folks. Doesn't sound like it, does it? I'm ripped, snorting mad, and you should be too. His Bangor chapter organization has a lot more rhetoric that we're going to pass along to you right now. That's not good, folks. Because, as you see behind me here, truth matters. Truth matters. You know why? Because truth is not relative. Truth is objective. Now here's a statement of purpose, folks. A statement of purpose for this sacrilegious, rhetorical, narrative, ideological slam against people who gave their lives on June 6, 1944. No thanks to this guy. But here's their statement of purpose. we, meaning the organizers and members of this, if you can believe it, Bangor and Brunswick chapters, by the way, have dutifully served our nation, do hereby affirm greater responsibility to serve the cause of world peace. To this end, we will work with others to increase public awareness of the costs of war, to restrain our government from intervening overtly and covertly, I'll play on words there, overtly and covertly in the internal affairs of other nations. Is that right? I doubt it. To end the arms race and to reduce and eventually eliminate nuclear weapons, to seek justice for veterans and victims of war, to abolish war as an instrument of national policy. Oh, please. No friggin' way. And this one from a Beacon's post from an organization called Beacon, B-E-A-C-O-N. On June 2nd, 2025, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Last week in Bangor, veterans and advocates called on Susan Collins to oppose Trump's House-passed reconciliation bill, which slashes SNAP, you know, the food stamp program, slashes Medicaid and veterans care to fund tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy. Now, here we go again. This is the same thing and rhetoric garbage you've been hearing, folks, from the left-wing media since God knows when, probably back when Trump first came down the escalator and was running for office, and he upset Hillary Clinton. And she hasn't stopped yakety-yakety-yakketing since. Adam Toothaker, Mr. Wonderful here, president of that Maine chapter for Veterans for Peace and a retired Marine, all the more reason that this guy needs to get his head examined. He described how deeply veterans rely on the VA and how this bill sponsored and proposed cuts would strip down staffing and services at the VA. I'm a veteran. I have full VA benefits, and that's saying a little bit too much, folks, but I've been treated with dignity, pride, and respect ever since I got my benefits after serving in the United States Air Force. He says the VA is a deal that we made with the U.S. government, says Toothaker. Every day, young Americans get told by the United States government that if you serve our country, the VA will be here to take care of you. That's the deal. You go to risk your health, you risk your life, you stay away from your family for months at a time. It's the military, man! Are you kidding me? Anybody who's served in the armed forces knows that. So, says Toothaker, we've upheld our end of the deal, and we want this administration, without saying Donald Trump's name, we want this whole government to uphold their end of the deal. Screw him. We're going to have some conversations with Mr. Toothaker, hopefully in the not-too-distant future, folks. Now, as this organization and others in our own state promote the downfall and destruction of our country's values, ladies and gentlemen, and our cultures and our lifestyles while they're at it, as you heard Toothaker stab our World War II veterans in the back about fighting fascism for no good reason, let's see about the recent Los Angeles riots taking center stage, where President Trump had already called in the National Guard units there to stop the internal violence and hate against Israel and to praise the existence of Palestine, is what they are doing. What does that come to? Well, this story came out from Epoch Times on the National Guard troops on the ground in L.A. amid the protests and riots. He authorized, meaning President Trump, their deployment amid the riots. And here's how that article was presented to the general public back on June 8th. Troops were confirmed, National Guard that is, to be in L.A. after President Trump ordered the deployment over the weekend, following days of protests and the riots, become more radical and more violent. The U.S. Northern Command confirmed in a post on social media platform X on Sunday morning that the California National Guard started deploying troops in the L.A. area, and some members were already on the ground. The military added, quote, "Additional information will be provided as units are identified and deployed." Thanks to photos of National Guard troops and other assets. They're not going to get the mainstream media to take pictures because they'll spin it and spit on it. Members of California's Guard were seen staging early Sunday at the federal complex in downtown LA that includes the Metropolitan Detention Center, one of several sites where confrontations involving hundreds of people were taking place over the last several days. Troops included members of the 79th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, according to social media posts from the U.S. Northern Command, not from the media, and showed dozens of National Guard members with long guns in an armored vehicle. The message was issued just hours after Trump wrote on social media platform Truth Social that the National Guard is doing a great job to quell violence, clashes, and unrest, before he criticized both California Governor Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, both Democrats, as I think everyone knows, and accusing them of slow-walking a response to the protest. Earlier Sunday, which would have been June 8th, Bass wrote that the National Guard has not been deployed in the city of Los Angeles. Oh, really? Is that right, Karen? Funny how her name is Karen. Wink, wink. Although that came before the Northern Command's post online, Karen. The Epoch Times had contacted Bass's office for comment, but didn't get one. Gee, I wonder why. President Trump wrote the radical left protests by instigators and paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. Also, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. Or, guess what? I think you'll be under arrest. Over the weekend, Trump confirmed in a signed memorandum that he'd deploy 2,000 guards, National Guards, to the Los Angeles area in response to the violence. Here's just some of them, folks, from the Epoch Times, a reliable media source. In a signal of the administration's approach, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also warned that he would deploy active duty Marines if violence continues in the area. Active duty military, Newsom and Bass. Got it? The deployment also follows clashes near a Home Depot in the heavily Latino city of Paramount, south of Los Angeles. They've been in the news lately, and not necessarily for good reasons. As protesters sought to block Border Patrol vehicles, some hurling rocks and chunks of barricade cement that they hammered off, and were throwing some of those chunks off of overpasses down below. That's not insanity. I don't know what is. Now, here's some comments from the general public. If the LAPD are not arresting people, says one person, for the assaults on these ICE officers and other federal agents, they're complicit and should be incarcerated as well. The LAPD are pathetic, useful tools of the conglomerate of evil that runs California, and they should all, each and every one, says this guy, be ashamed of themselves after taking an oath to uphold the law, then allowing this to happen. Ha! The LAPD was told to stand down by Newsom. That's why Trump sent in National Guard without his permission. Uh-oh. Yes, he had. Completely unlawful. The governor cannot simply tell the police not to enforce the law, especially when it comes to assault. LAPD absolutely has a choice in this, and they chose to let cement being chucked off the overpasses, as I just mentioned, right at officers, LAPD, and National Guard. Do you think it was intended to hurt them? A video inside law enforcement vehicle of the National Guard shows massive cracked windshields after left-wing protesters in LA hurled rocks at authorities. Gee, I don't think this is really going well for the protesters, folks. Don't think so, anyway. Now, we got one more here, folks, that involves Donald Trump and how quickly we forget the past, especially when it was not good news, or they tried to make it not good news for Donald Trump back in January of 2021, January 6th. You recall, don't you? I know he does. Our bald-headed friend here. Here's a fact check. This one from Blaze Media, folks, on June 9th. Fact check. President Trump authorized 20,000 National Guard troops for duty on January 6th, 2021. Did you not remember that? We have it in our files, folks. And in a very specific and detailed pamphlet, actually almost a periodical, detailing what really happened on January 6th, 2021 at the United States Capitol. Democrats continue to spread the pernicious lie that the president refused National Guard help, according to the article here. The former Democrat co-chairman of the House Select Committee on January 6th continues to lie about President Trump's authorization of the D.C. National Guard on January 6th. Amid the backdrop of the L.A. anti-ICE riots, Representative Benny Thompson, Democrat of Mississippi, surprise, he went to social media June 8th, this past June 8th, and claimed, quote, Trump refused to call the National Guard during the January 6th insurrection. Pelosi will never go for it. Is that right? I don't think so. I don't think they've ever destroyed that video of Donald Trump's announcement. Hours. Mere hours before any protesters, peaceful protesters, approached the Capitol building on that day. Trump refused to call the National Guard during the January 6th insurrection, said Representative Thompson, but now he's sending them to L.A. to respond to protests against immigration raids. No troops for rioters attacking democracy, but a whole show of force for people demanding justice. Boy, oh boy, you're in such hypocrites. They're such hypocrites, folks. They just are. It's really rotten. Rotten to the core. Now, folks, we have some final articles. Events that have happened over the past 48 hours, maybe 72 hours by now, including some recent past history, including the one we just read to you there from the so-called experts and mass media analysts that have dragged U.S. citizens into the depths of anarchy and rebellion. What are they? Well, they're not exactly fun to go over. Why did Donald Trump have to do what Gavin Newsom refused to do? Our last input on this from Firm today, folks, on the fact files, veterans' rights, are they fair? And what about the LA riots and National Guard? But this article from Blaze Media by Michael Letts on June 9th. Newsom smeared Trump's response to unrest in the LA riots area as provocative, but voters know what they saw, riots in the streets and a president who finally took action. When local leaders won't act against a growing national crisis, the president must. That's what leadership requires, plain and simple. Since retaking office in January, President Trump made real progress in the fight against illegal immigration. Federal officers have arrested thousands of individuals who pose a threat to public safety. Immigration and Customs Enforcement stepped up enforcement. And law enforcement agencies across the country are finally empowered to act. Momentum is building. You better pray, ladies and gentlemen, here in the state of Maine, that doesn't happen in the state of Maine. Pray to Almighty God and our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that it does not happen. That calmer heads prevail. Rather than call in help, Newsom let the protests spiral. Rather than support enforcement, he played to his base, so Trump stepped in. A couple of last paragraphs on this topic, folks. Even as law enforcement cracked down on criminal networks, a wave of resistance emerged. Some people were so determined to shield illegal immigrants from accountability that they were willing to risk arrest themselves. This isn't civil disobedience, it's delusion. Now Los Angeles has joined the act. Protests against ICE raids over the weekend overwhelmed police through the 6th, 7th, and 8th of June. And Trump believed he had no choice but to respond. He deployed 2,000 members of the National Guard to restore order, assist law enforcement, and help track down additional criminal suspects shielded by sanctuary activists. Gee, that pretty much clears it up, doesn't it, folks? A couple of other things, folks, before we wrap this episode up of Fact Files. We're talking about veterans' rights being fair, are they? And a wrap-up on our view about the Los Angeles riots and the National Guard getting involved, thanks to President Trump. But before we do, hope you can read this one right here. It's How to Prevent Bullying. Now, believe it or not, our own Maine Education Department of Education, has policies on how to avoid being bullied, harassed, even to the point of not being able to live your life peacefully, especially on social media. I would check with them if I were you, folks. We can certainly give you a link for that. It's all about this right here. It's always been about this. Of course, what comes before these are our other mission statements, folks. Truth, facts, reality, and common sense. As we wrap up, folks, another constitutional history lesson we have for you from our author friend, Sam Sorbo, and her extraordinary book, Words for Warriors, Fighting Back Against Crazy Socialists and the Liberal Left. Gotta love it. What is it? Well, here we go, folks, to bring you the real definition and meaning for all Americans called Habeas Corpus. Well, let's see here. Habeas corpus is a noun. It is a person's right to be brought before a judge and to a fair trial in court, especially in order to be released in the case that no proof is offered of legal wrongdoing warranting detention. Article, section, and clause of the Constitution states, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion, surprise, or invasion, that the public safety may require it. It is a vital foundation principle of our country, said Dwight Eisenhower. We are proud because from the beginning of the nation, man can walk upright no matter who he is or who she is, and cannot walk upright and meet a friend or his enemy. And he does not fear that because that enemy may be in a position of great power, that he can be suddenly thrown in jail or rot there without charges and with no recourse to justice. Refer to January 6, 2021 and the J6 Committee. We have the Habeas Corpus Act, she writes, and finishes by saying, respect it as well. Especially the rule of law and people who are supposed to uphold it under the Constitution. You want to answer that question, folks? Does the U.S. Supreme Court really uphold the law of the land for all legal citizens? Do they? You can answer that one, folks. In the meantime, thank you for joining us here on FIRM, Fairness in Reporting Media. I am Mark Merrill. Go to our sources here, where you can see all of our podcasts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, growing every day, every week, every month. We appreciate the contributions and the support. You see us on rumble.com/fairnessmedia1. Go to our email at fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. You can also find our podcasts on Rumble. In addition to Rumble, X or Twitter.com and YouTube.com. As always, Mark Merrill reporting for FIRM. Stay safe and peace to everyone.